kind of in general. So learning is this relatively permanent change in behavior due to experience. And most behavior is learned. And so some helpful terms that we can talk about, first of all, is a response is an identifiable behavior. So a response can be observable, such as running or eating, but they also can be internal responses, such as having a faster heartbeat when you hear a noise in the dark. So it can be observable or not. We also have different terms for what happens before or after a response. So an event that happens before the response is the antecedent. So my cat hears me pull into the driveway, she runs to the door. So me pulling into the driveway is the antecedent to her behavior of running to the door. And the effects that follow the response are the consequences. So when I enter the house, I pick her up and I pet her. So the consequence of her actions from running to the door is being petted. And so my cats learn that the sound of my car pulling into the driveway means she's going to receive love from me. And so she's conditioned to run to the door to receive that love. And how that happens is actually the basis of classical conditioning. So Ivan Pavlov was a Russian doctor, and he actually wasn't even interested in psychology when he was studying. But he really ended up making a significant impact on the psychological community. So he accidentally discovered the basic principles for classical conditioning when he was experimenting on dogs. And so classical conditioning is based on what happens before the response. And learning occurs by pairing variables together that develop into a response. And so what we talk about here are the basic principles. First of all, an unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus that automatically causes a specific response. A conditioned response is caused by the unconditioned stimulus, and it's automatic, it's unlearned, it has to be a reflex. Then we have the conditioned stimulus, and so this is formerly the neutral stimulus, and it's being paired with the unconditioned stimulus. And eventually, that conditioned stimulus will create the conditioned response on its own without the unconditioned stimulus. We'll go over that in a little more detail with an example so it makes a little bit more sense. All right, so this is what Pavlov's original experiment looked like with the dog's meat powder. He was measuring saliva, determining their impacts and the impact of the meat powder and the bell on saliva. And so what happened here is the idea, again, basically is that we have some reflex, and in dogs this is going to be salivation, the ability to salivate in response to meat powder. And so when the dog is the dog is given the meat powder, and then let me think, where am I at here? I'm so sorry. Into my mind, my phone rang and it interrupted my thought process. All right, so let's focus. Okay, so the idea is that we have a behavior, and then when we pair these things together, it creates a response. And so in dogs, we have the meat powder. We combined and pair that meat powder with a bell, and then eventually that bell will cause the dog's reaction. So I'm looking, here's the next slide that kind of shows where things are paired together and it relates in that unconditioned response. And so what happened is we have the bell and the meat powder together, And so you have that neutral stimulus, which is the bell. You have the unconditioned stimulus, which is the meat powder. You combine those together, and the dog starts to salivate in response to the bell and the meat powder together. Eventually, you take away the meat powder, and you only ring the bell, and the dog will salivate just to the sound of the bell. And that is the basis of conditioning, or classical conditioning. This applies to people as well, of course. And so we have the experiment of little Albert. And little Albert here was experimented on before the IRB, which is it's an agency that regulates ethical treatment within research. And so this, of course, happened before that, and so the experiment was in 1920 with John Watson, and his research assistant, Ms. Rayner. They performed this conditioning experiment on an infant named Albert B. And he was given this white, fluffy toy rat, and his reaction was playful. He picked up the rat, he would play with it, and he didn't have any negative response to it. And there was no fear of the white rat whatsoever. And so the next time Albert was given the white rat, again, he reacted in the same way. It was a toy, he enjoyed it. But this time, the psychologist created a loud sound with a metal pipe and a hammer. When they gave him the white rat, they had made a huge loud sound. And of course, to an infant, that's scary. And so he started to cry at the sound of the loud noise. And so they started to pair. Every time they gave the white rat to the child, to Albert, they would pair it with that loud noise. And eventually they stopped making the loud noise. They would just give him the white rat, and he would cry in response to the white rat. And this started to generalize. They gave him a white fluffy bunny, which he cried in response to. They gave him a white, or a Santa Claus that had a big white fluffy beard, and he cried in response to that. And so he started to generalize anything white and fluffy with that loud, scary sound, and so he was conditioned to be afraid of white, fluffy objects. And like I said, this research would not happen today. It wouldn't be ethical to treat children in this way. Some backstory to little Albert. He actually was John Watson's son. Albert's mother did not know they were experimenting on little Albert. Eventually, John Watson divorced his wife and married his research assistant, Miss Rayner. But, so that's kind of the backstory of little Mr. Albert there. We also can use these principles of classical conditioning in positive ways. And so, if we wanted to condition a child to laugh every time we clapped, we could pair something with clapping. And so we would need a variable that creates laughter. And so if we chose something like tickling, we could pair the unconditioned stimulus, which is tickling, with the conditioned stimulus, which would be clapping. And we pair those two together, so we'll clap and then we tickle, we clap and then we tickle, we clap and then we tickle, and the child's reflex is to laugh at being tickled. And so eventually we can just clap and the child will start to laugh. And so that's how you can do it, maybe in a more positive way, assuming that the child likes to be tickled. Some people do, some people don't. But if the child likes tickling, then that would be something that you could pair together in a more positive way. So basically, I do have a slide on little Albert there sitting on the floor looking a little traumatized. So many psychologists believe that phobias are conditioned emotional responses, and that they occur on the basis, again, of this classical conditioning. So the idea is we learn our fears. So, for example, if you got bit as a child by a dog, it really frightened you. And so you have this fear of dogs now, And this fear can generalize, as it did in little Albert's case, as a white fluffy, anything white and fluffy. So if you're afraid of dogs, this can generalize into a fear of animals. So then you have a phobia of animals. And so it depends on the person and the circumstances and the severity of the trauma. And it definitely can impact and develop into a phobia, which can be pretty life-altering for a lot of people. So, but the idea is if we learn something, we can unlearn it. And that's where treatment comes into play. Now, as we talked about before, with dogs and the meat powder and in the bell, with clapping and tickling, with little Albert and the white rat, eventually extinction will occur. If you stop pairing those things together, eventually the conditioned stimulus won't create the conditioned response anymore. So eventually when little Albert was given a white fluffy rabbit, eventually he wasn't afraid of it anymore because nothing negative happened in his environment, and so he learned to get over the fear of the fluffy whiteness. If we stopped pairing the tickling with the clapping, eventually the clap wouldn't result in laughter anymore. And so eventually those extinction does happen over a period of time. Like I said though, if it's a phobia, if it generalizes and it creates this phobia and the phobia is limiting for people, they can go to treatment. And one treatment we talk about is exposure treatment. And what we do is we expose them, or we decondition people by exposing them to their fear, by having them present or confront their fear. And you do this in a variety of ways, but basically the person comes in and they learn relaxation techniques. And there's lots of different ways you can teach relaxation. One of the easiest ones is you divide your body into thirds. And so people will tense a third of their body and hold it for 15 seconds and then let it go. And then you tense the middle section of your body and you hold it for 10 seconds and let it go, and then the top half or the top third, and you tense and you let go. And people practice this 10 to 15 minutes every day. So they practice relaxation, practice deep breathing. Some people practice going to a happy place to create a happy place in their mind. And this can be really helpful for people who feel anxious in social situations or in particular situations. Like a lot of clients will have an issue with sitting in a doctor's office. The busy waiting room creates anxiety. They don't feel comfortable there. And so they have a happy place in their head that they can go to during this stressful time. They just use it when they need it. They're not stressed all the time, just in certain situations. And then they can go to their happy place and be able to relax and get through that waiting process. And so we teach clients all these different ways. And whatever works best for the client is what the therapist or psychologist will focus on. And so the person is taught how to do relaxation techniques that works for them. They practice those on a daily basis. Their body learns to feel, they learn to feel what it feels good in that relaxation part, and they learn how to do that automatically. So they don't spend a lot of time having to learn, and they learned over the course of time. So when they're in the treatment room, they know how to just immediately relax their body. And so say someone has a phobia of spiders, when the person comes in after they learn relaxation, there's a spider in a cage on the opposite side of the treatment room. And the person, of course, knows the spider's there. They're able to relax. They're able to engage in conversation and connect with in treatment, knowing that the spider is there. Eventually, you'll expose the person to the spider more, so maybe the spider moves halfway across the room during a different treatment session. And then by the end of treatment, maybe there's a spider somewhere in the room and the person doesn't know where it is. And they gradually overcome their fear of spiders through relaxation and through that exposure to that spider.